Hello, everyone. I hope that you are doing fantastic today. I am so excited to be here. So, welcome to Michelle's Inspiration Hour. Everyone has a life inspiration to share. And I hope that these episodes that I'm bringing to you bring some type of inspiration into your life. Now, my question today is who is listening that develops a to do list as soon as you get out of that bed and you have a to do list that you say, I'm going to follow today? But what happens if you're not able to get on everything on your list? Does it bring you stress? I know a lot of people that it does. So don't say it doesn't. Okay. So I know a lot of people that are in that situation that if they don't check the boxes at the end of the day, they can't go to sleep. Okay. So we're going to be talking about that and how to help you, hopefully. So here is a list that anyone can use: pray, set goals, make plan, work hard, succeed, thank God, and stay humble. Now, that's an easy one to follow, right? Unless you go, oh, I don't know if I can be humble. All right. So we're going to dive deeper into with our next guest. And let me introduce who she is. So, Margaret Agard is a popular podcast guest, award winning author, and a keynote speaker. Margaret invites audiences to consider if they might be working so hard and following the wrong life's pathway in their life. So she shares a simple daily process to get out from under overwhelming business and live a life of joy and true purpose by turning their to do list over to God. Margaret now accomplishes more, is able to get more sleep, and has less stress. That's the number one factor. And her story inspires others to do the same. She is an award winning author of the In His Footsteps memoirs based on her experiences of giving her life to God by giving her daily to do list to God. All right, so let me go ahead and bring her on. I love it. I love it. How are you doing today, my dear?
Good. How are you, Michelle? Happy
I
to be
am
here.
I am doing fantastic. I know that with your story and with your advice that we're going to inspire a couple of people today, especially those that get so stressed
Yeah.
if they don't follow their plan of the day. So tell us how you got started. How did you come up with this concept and your inspiration behind it?
Initially, what was happening is I was a single mom, and I still had my 8 children at home. Some were in college, some were in high school, or junior high, and and I was a sole financial support.
Hmm.
And for some reason, I thought I should finish up my college degree. I only had 2 semesters left, so I was going to
Oh,
school full time.
wow. You were just needing lots of energy,
Yeah,
weren't you?
I was working in the high tech industry, and they were going public, and they wanted their executives to, to have on paper things that would look good when they went public. So I thought I got to finish that degree,
All right.
and so anyway, any one of those things would have been a full time job. I think any one of those three things, being the mother to eight,
Absolutely.
being the sole financial support for eight, um, and finishing up my college degree. So I knew, because I'd been an executive in the high tech industry, I knew how to set priorities. I've read all the books and done all the stuff, right?
Right.
But it wasn't working. It wasn't working for me, no matter what I did. And I was hardly getting any sleep. And I'd wake up in the middle of the night thinking, oh my gosh, what didn't I get done? Like that. That's how it was. And
Yes.
so at some point, a couple of things happened that I realized I, I did something that made sense. Like I wrote a paper,
Mhm.
only this was back in the 90s. So I went, there wasn't the internet, classes weren't
Oh,
on the
right.
internet. So I show up at class and there's a note on the door: the professor's sick, paper won't be due for it till the next week. And I thought, well, if I'd known that, I could have done something else. You know what I mean?
Mhm. You're
And
right.
so then the same thing now, I'd go into a client and they'd be like, oh, that thing we had you to do, with change your mind. Well, it'd be completely different now. And I thought, oh my gosh, if I know. And then I thought, if I only knew the future. And then I thought, well, I know who does know the future, and that would be God. And that's when I started asking God, like, well, you know what really has to be done because you know what the future holds, right?
Mhm.
So that's how it started. The question started like this: what do I have to do today, God?
Mhm.
And I had learned how to kind of pay attention to that still small voice, to that sense of prompting, that sense of what's right. So I could actually
Yeah.
take a list and look at it and think, okay, I don't need to do this. I don't need to do this. But and then he would add a couple of things, and it was usually to do something to help someone else. God, like I don't know, stick rolls through a
Thank
circuit
you.
tube. Yeah, make a few phone calls or something. Um, and it was interesting because everything worked out. And
Mhm.
I found out I really didn't have to worry about things I was worried about. And he took things off the list like, Margaret, this is not your time in life to do whatever it was I was going to do. Who knows? Like cook
Right.
blanket or
Right.
something. Like, no, it's not your time for that. And so I was actually finished every day by about 8 and get a good night's sleep. I never woke up in the middle of the night thinking, oh, what did I leave undone? Because I knew I was talking to the creator of the universe.
Right. Exactly.
And so
Exactly.
that's when that was my first question. And then what I say is you might be running fast down the wrong path. He made a few changes in where I was headed with some things. As far as my degree, he added a little program to it that turned out to be very helpful to me later. And then, so I started asking this: what do you want me to do today, God? It's different. It's a little different from what do I have to do to
Right.
what do you want me to
That's
do?
right.
And I would say that's when I really turn my life over to God, and especially for list makers. You know, I'm the kind of list maker who, if I do something that isn't on my list, I write it on my list so I could cross it off. So
Mhm.
that's the kind of list maker I'm talking to. So this is why it works for me. And
Right. Right.
yes, and he did reshape my life basically. Had me, you know, sometimes it'll be a big project. He'll say, I want you to start, like I had a radio show for a while. He's like, I want you to start a radio show. And I
Oh,
thought, I don't
wow.
know how to do it, but I'll figure it out. Things like that. I want you to start writing your life on the internet. And this was back before WordPress even existed. People weren't
Mm.
doing
Mhm.
blogs. So it was hard to figure out how to do it. And I found a site, Open Diary, where I began to write it. And after I'd been writing there a couple of years, he said, now I want you to make a book of that. And that's how my first book came to be. And I mean, it was just things like that. It would be little things that would take you a long time.
Oh, right, right, right. And
Yeah.
you know what I found fascinating because I'm going to go ahead and show in the monitor the pictures of all your books, your memoirs. I read the first one, and it's so interesting because when you said that, sometimes there'd be things on your list that you didn't want to do. I found it very, inspiring in your book because people, a lot of times go, oh, I don't, right now I want to relax. And then God was sending people your way, or you had to go to the hospital
Oh my gosh.
and,
Yeah.
and send them things and try to support them. And you're going, but God, I need that time alone. But
Right.
you did it anyway. You know what? You surrendered to God. You knew you had the faith to do so, where a lot of people would say, I'm completely done.
Right.
So that's very inspiring in itself.
And always turns out to be a blessing.
Mhm.
Um, so yes. And I would say the hard thing for people when they first start this, it really is hard to have in your head, if you're like I am, you wake up, you're ready to go. Like you have the list, you know what you're gonna do and you're ready. So I
Right.
found it helped after a while to just start asking the question at night because it was easier for me to cross things off my list and add different things at night than
Oh,
in the
right.
morning when I was up and already going.
Oh, I got you.
Yes, yes. And just amazing, how much more relaxed and peaceful my life became as a result.
And see, and that's why, and a lot of times I tell people because they tend to resist, they think this is what I want to do. But if you, trust in the process and you surrender, things
Yes,
just kind of fall into place. And you're going, oh, I didn't think about that. Like you said about your radio station. I didn't know I was going to do a radio station with all the stuff that you have,
yeah.
but it put in front of your pathway. And you knew. Now, let me ask you a question. How do you know that it's actually God speaking to you? When you say, I know God's talking to me. So how do you know that it is God talking to you?
I did have to learn that, Michelle, and I think everybody is different.
Mhm.
So for me, in my 20s, I said, I don't know how to hear your voice. And people talk about it all the time. Oh, I heard his voice. I'm like, well.
Mhm.
So I said, I actually asked that prayer. And so if people don't know how to hear his voice, I suggest you just ask, help me learn to hear your voice. So for me, what happened is a thought would come and I would blow it off and it would come again. It was fairly insistent and it was something good. It would be something good, like invite someone to dinner. The first time it happened, it was invite someone to dinner. And I was like, yeah, no, because I mean, we just had them come to dinner on Friday and it's Monday. And who invites people to dinner on Mondays? Doesn't make sense. I'm not doing it. And then it came about the third time. Well, I just prayed the prayer, help me to hear your voice. And then I
Mhm.
thought, oh, maybe this is God. And it was interesting. They came to dinner and then shared with us that they had wanted to start paying tithing and they were behind. Now, I don't recommend catching up with tithing. I recommend just from this day forward, but they
Oh,
wanted to catch up. So they had a check come in and they, there was enough to pay up all their tithing or to buy some food or do half and half. But they decided, and they were out of food, but they would just pay tithing. And then
oh,
by Sunday afternoon, they had had invitations to dinner every night that week before they even left church, except Monday night.
oh,
Okay,
right.
I was like, you need to call and ask him to come to dinner. So I was like, oh, that was God, right?
Yeah.
And so that happened. And so I've learned that I can get a thought and ignore, just sort of like blow it off. But let me
Mhm.
tell you, I don't blow off thoughts like, maybe I'll go eat that chocolate bar that's left. I will do that, but it's the
Right.
thought, I should
Right.
call this person or whatever. So some people say that. Some people say it's sort of they dream things. Some people say if a name pops into my head, someone I haven't thought about for a while, I know I should contact that person. They've just learned it. That's how they hear it. But for me, I've actually learned I can have a thought and I can question the thought. I can remember once it was like, don't take your books to the library today. Well, I mean, again, it wasn't online. You couldn't. And I thought, well, they're due. I don't want to owe 20 cents. So, like, right? I turned it in late. And I was like, so I said, okay, so what am I supposed to do? Because they're due. I was like, call a library and just have them recheck them for you. I was like, oh, good thinking, God.
And I love that everybody does, have a relationship with God and they're able to hear a different voice, depending on who you are. So I absolutely love that. Now you call yourself a Christian mystic. What
So
does that mean?
yeah, someone else said that about themselves. Like, I'm a Christian mystic, they say. And I thought, what is that? So I looked it up. And it says, here's what the Christian mystic does. The Christian mystic seeks the direct union of the soul with divinity through contemplation and love. And I thought,
Oh,
huh, I bet you're a Christian mystic, Michelle.
I bet I'm going, oh, I love it. I love it.
I know.
Absolutely. So
And
I
so when
hope
you
so.
think, then I'm there in the evenings and I'm thinking, what do you want me to do today, God? And I'm paying attention to hear that the Holy Spirit, to hear that sense of peace and direction. That's, contemplation and love and a direct union with the soul. My goal is, how do you always have it? That's really my goal. How do you always have that?
Yes. Yeah, because we hope that we have it all the time,
Yeah,
except some of those days when you're just not feeling that love.
yeah,
It's so difficult, but it's also good to have that relationship with God.
right,
And I tell people, that relationship with God is so important because that way in spiritual world or whoever you connect with, because you don't feel alone during those days when you're down and depressed and not feeling the love and not wanting to give everybody else love.
right. Right. And that's what I've learned. I can learn I can pray for that love,
Mhm.
you know. And it's interesting. I had an experience where I was like, so one of the prayers I pray
Mhm.
is help me to see this person as you do. Help me to love this person as you do. And if you read my book, you read that story about my son Dan, that
Yes.
I prayed
Yeah.
that prayer. And he was such an obnoxious 15-year-old. You're like, oh my gosh. Um, I love him because he's my son. Don't like him much though.
Yes.
Kind of
We
where
all
I'm at.
go through that as moms.
Yes, and it was pray that prayer, and we had this experience. I'm checking our time to see if I have time to tell this story, but he.
Oh, no, I think it's great. Go ahead.
Okay, so I was at my mom's house, and she had a bunch of women's magazines next to her couch, and so I was kind of flipping through them, and I saw this story. I started to read about this kid who had turned in one of the favorite coaches at school for abuse,
Oh,
basically, sexual abuse, and he had just been pilloried by the kids at school because I loved the coach, didn't think much of his kid, and so. And he said at some point he became so depressed he was like suicidal. But he had on the bedstand next to him, he had framed a petition that only had a few names on it from people who. And as I read that, I remember I just prayed that prayer about my son Dan. I'm looking through this, and as was thinking about it, and I thought, oh, I want to read it because it reminds me of something that just happened in our town. And then as I read it, I realized it was about our town and that boy and that coach. And as I came to this part where he said he found on the bed he had next to him this small petition that only had a few names on it. And I knew whose name was at the top, was my son Dan. I knew it because I remember the day I had dropped him at school and he said he didn't like what was happening to the kid. And my son Dan is big, he's like 6'4", and he letters in 3 sports, and he's, well known and popular in school. And so he wanted to pass around this petition and have other kids sign it that basically said, we support you.
Wow.
But when I went to pick him up that afternoon, I said, how'd it go? He was mad. He said the principal had said they couldn't talk about it at school anymore, that this was, a civil matter, and he wouldn't let him pass that around. So he signed it, and a few of his friends signed it. That's all he could do, and then gave it to the kid. And so as I read that story and looked at what was going on, I realized that this is who God saw as my son. He didn't see this kind of arrogant, mouthy, critical 15-year-old. He saw someone who would see someone who needed help and reached out and did something about it. So I just thought, wow, that's amazing. Like, who would even think you'd come across that magazine or that article? But,
Right.
And
I mean, I think, and I tell people too, prayer is so important. I mean, just, important. And it is so effective. It's that cause and effect thing. And maybe that prayer led you to that article.
Right, I'm sure it did. I don't think I would have come across it otherwise.
Right.
Even in my head, I don't think it would have really meant as much, but that I had prayed that prayer. Yeah. And eventually, at some point, I prayed that prayer about myself. I didn't want to. I'm sure people have told you this all the time. Ask God to show you how he sees you, especially if we have a hard time loving ourselves.
Oh, absolutely.
And I thought, well, I don't want to because either maybe he'll think I'm so great that I get really prideful, or so terrible that I get depressed or discouraged.
Yeah.
But what happened is I really saw myself as just this person who's doing her best. And not perfect, but not terrible. And God just loves me. And I felt it. I didn't, like, in my head, most of us know, if you say to someone, does God love you? They're like, oh yeah, but it's up here. In their heart, not so much. And so, yes, that absolutely changed my ability to love other people, to just be able to relax into God's love, even just for me.
Yeah. Now, with your memoirs, I know that you felt led to do it. So, and what was your main purpose? What is your number one goal? People, when they read your books, what do you want them to get out of it?
I think I read a lot of books from people who are saying, I follow God, and they come across as pretty people I would really look up to and think I wouldn't be that person. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, And so that's why I put my book out there, because I'm a kind of a selfish, whiny person. And yet God uses me a lot. And I thought, oh, well, this is like for people like me to get that, like, even though you're not, but you're good enough.
Yeah. And when I was reading the book, to me, it was something I could resonate with, that I could understand, because you weren't like, saying, oh, I'm going to accept everything and be happy about it, because sometimes you're not, because you're tired.
Oh my gosh. Yes. I remember that one lady, it was like, I'd been praying, like, I want to be there for her. But finally we had a break. And I'm sitting down, and we didn't have like cable or anything in our house because we never had time to watch TV. But we did have this little, thing on the roof. And I saw, and I happened to like Star Trek. There was a Star Trek episode I hadn't seen. I was going to sit and watch it. And then she called and asked for help. And I thought, really?
Yeah.
Really? I get a chance to sit down and kick back, and then I'm going to have to leave, go help this. And then I thought, I'm praying that when she needs me, that she'll call me. But darn, it wasn't convenient. But it did work well. you know.
You're
And once
right.
you do it, you feel good, right?
Right.
Once
Right.
you manage to get yourself out of the chair,
Yeah,
you
that's the one thing is getting up and moving,
right,
getting that force behind it, knowing that you're going to do it no matter what. And you did it. So good. Yeah. So that, yeah. So I didn't really see it as whining. I was thinking, you know what? She's showing us that she is human,
mm,
you know, that's going through a human experience, and that it's almost like, like God is your, we do say he's our father, but it's like your own biological dad telling you to do something. You're going, okay, I'll get up and do it
right,
now.
right. And I think I shared a couple of times when I didn't do it and I regretted it. I thought,
Right.
oh, I should have listened. I should have
Right.
listened.
Right.
Yeah, I think
So as we're talking about this, lately I've been really thinking spirituality and everything, and not really, putting the religion in it, but more of spirituality. What
yes.
does spirituality mean to you?
Well, for me, my religion is what gave me my spirituality. I think this connection with God and with the Holy Spirit, I mean, the Holy Spirit spirituality, that is where I feel very connected and
Hmm.
connected to people and through God. That is spirituality. But for me, that I learned about it through my religion.
Hmm.
That's how I got it.
Right.
And yes, and
Right.
that's how I'm reminded. It's like people who go to yoga class, and where do you go? You go
Hmm.
to, I mean, you can just do it at home. You don't have to go. You can go home
Right.
from work and do it. But somehow going there and seeing other people doing it, and you give you some, and that's how I feel. That's what religion does me in terms of spirituality. My spirituality is a outgrowth of that. Yes,
I love
or
it.
yeah.
I love it. So is there anything that we have not touched upon that you go, you know what? I want to talk about that as well.
Um, no.
I was okay. So we talked all about your final wisdom. Okay. So shall we bring up the will, the question will, and let's see what question, the last question of the day. Uh, First off, I've got to spin it,
Yeah. Wait.
and I'll read it. It's where we're sitting from. It's real little.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
Can I
So.
really say that? Okay.
So, what is your favorite book? Now, it can't be your book.
Right, it's not gonna be my book, I guarantee. Um,
So what is
so
your
I
favorite?
am kind of addicted to memoirs, and so I
Oh,
do
yeah.
like to read those. But I do when the scriptures to just sit down at
Right.
times and look through it. Is there a book I reread? Probably that one. But is yeah. Um,
So, what is the scripture that you go to in the Bible that you don't have to say word for word because you don't have to memorize anything like that, except when you're in little, elementary school and your Sunday school
right,
teacher says memorize this verse.
right.
But what verse really inspires you and keeps you going?
I think Romans 8:28, which for a lot of people is it, all things work together for good for those who love God and who are
Yeah.
called according to his purpose, and that would be all. And I like to say that it's a good one because I think we all know that good works for good. We
Hmm.
don't question that.
Right.
So it's
Right.
referring to the things that don't seem so good. And that does get me through some hard times.
Yeah, excellent.
Yeah.
All right, let me say state your book one more time. It's In His Footsteps. And where can they find your book?
Well, okay, so there are three. Two are out, and the third one I'm working on. And of course, they're available on Amazon. They're available at most bookstores. But on my website, inhisfootsteps.com, we'll have links. And also, I have two of the books. The first two books are also out as audiobooks. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Okay. I love that audio because you can really listen
Hmm.
to. Okay, so before we close, have you fulfilled your list for today?
Yes, I have. Actually, I have one thing left to do, but it's only 3:30 here, so I have time to do
All
it.
right, good for you. Good for you. I know. I love that. And I know so many people that are very logical and they have to check off their boxes before they can even go to sleep at night. Thank you so much for, sharing your inspirational story with the world, because I think, we're that much better with your books, your memoirs, your memories. And again, I don't think that, you're whining at all. I think you were saying, I am human, having a human experience.
Thanks, Michelle.
Thank you.